In the shadows of New York's skyline, power was never written in ink. It was written in blood. At the heart of that invisible empire stood one man, calm, calculating, and unshakable: Vito Genovese. To his enemies, he was the devil dressed in an Italian suit. To his family, he was a husband and father whose silence carried more weight than any shout. To history, he became the boss who vanished, the ghost of an empire built on loyalty, fear, and relentless ambition. Vito was born in 1897 in Tofino, a small sun-baked town near Naples. His parents, Felice and Nunziata, were poor farmers struggling to feed their family. Their life was marked by hunger, hardship, and the quiet dignity of survival. From an early age, Vito learned that no one handed you power. You took it. At 15, he followed his family to America, a voyage across the Atlantic that promised freedom but delivered struggle. They landed in New York, settling in the crowded maze of Little Italy, a place filled with noise, the smell of garlic and sweat, and the unspoken rule that you protected your own or died trying. He adapted quickly, quiet, observant, and ruthless when he needed to be. Vito understood control before he could even define it. By his late teens, he had entered the orbit of men who lived by their own code, the Italian gangs that ruled the neighborhood. Among them was a young, sharp-eyed man named Charles "Lucky" Luciano. Luciano recognized in Genovese a kindred spirit. While others chased glory, Vito sought structure and control. Their partnership would transform the criminal world forever. During Prohibition, America's thirst became the Mafia's fortune. As the nation banned alcohol, men like Genovese supplied it. He thrived in the chaos, turning crime into enterprise. He was efficient, disciplined, and completely without mercy when necessary. Luciano may have been the face of the operation, but Genovese was its spine. Together with Frank Costello and Meyer Lansky, they turned scattered gangs into a syndicate, a network that operated like a business and killed like a war machine. The blood of the Castellamarese War in 1931 sealed Genovese's reputation. The conflict between rival mafia factions left corpses across the city, but Vito played his cards perfectly. He helped orchestrate the assassination of Joe the Boss Masseria, ending years of chaos and opening the way for Luciano's rise to power. For his loyalty, Genovese received land, status, and influence. Yet deep within him, ambition never slept. He wanted more, and he would wait as long as it took to get it. In 1937, facing a murder charge, Genovese fled to Italy. What looked like exile became opportunity. In Mussolini's Italy, he reinvented himself as a man of importance, living among generals and politicians. Whispers claim he arranged assassinations for the fascist regime, eliminating enemies of the state while enriching himself. He wore tailored suits, attended high-level dinners, and moved through circles of power with the quiet grace of a predator who knew he belonged. When World War II erupted, Genovese did what he always did: he adapted. As the Allies invaded Italy, he shifted allegiance, offering his services to the U.S. Army as an interpreter and advisor. To some, it seemed patriotic. To those who knew him, it was simply strategy. Genovese was ensuring that no matter who won the war, he would remain on the winning side. In 1945, his past finally caught up to him. Recognized and extradited to America, he faced trial for the murder he had once fled. But witnesses disappeared, evidence dissolved, and the law once again bent in his favor. Vito Genovese walked free, his legend growing darker with each escape. The mafia world he returned to had changed. Luciano had been deported. Frank Costello had evolved into a more refined figure, a man of influence who mixed with politicians and businessmen. And in the background, Carlo Gambino was quietly building his own path to power. Genovese looked around and saw opportunity. He no longer wanted to be the man behind the throne. He wanted the throne itself. In 1957, he made his move. A gunman fired at Costello, grazing his head. Costello survived but stepped aside, weary of the endless bloodshed. "I forgive him," Costello said quietly, "but I won't forget." Genovese finally had what he wanted: command of the family that would bear his name for generations. For a moment, he stood at the peak. His empire stretched across labor unions, narcotics routes, construction contracts, and city politics. He controlled judges, bribed officials, and moved millions of dollars in silence. The Genovese family became the most powerful, secretive, and feared organization in American crime. But even kings can stumble. Later that same year, Genovese called for a national meeting of mafia bosses to solidify his authority. The location was a quiet town in upstate New York called Appalachian. It was supposed to be a triumph. Instead, it was a disaster. Suspicious police noticed the sudden influx of luxury cars and raided the gathering. Dozens of mobsters fled into the woods, abandoning money and records that exposed the mafia's existence to the public. The front-page headlines humiliated them all. Inside the organization, Genovese was blamed for the disaster. Enemies he thought subdued began whispering again. In 1959, the whispers became action. Luciano, Costello, and Gambino worked quietly behind the scenes. Soon, federal agents arrested Genovese on heroin trafficking charges. Many believed the evidence was planted, the witnesses coached. It didn't matter. The trial ended with a conviction, and the man who once ruled New York from the shadows was sent to prison for 15 years. Even behind bars, he refused to vanish. He ran operations through coded messages, bribed guards, and loyal intermediaries. Power still obeyed him, even if the world outside was changing. But time, more ruthless than any rival, began to erode what fear had built. By the late 1960s, his body was failing, and his influence was fading. In February 1969, in a federal medical prison in Springfield, Missouri, Vito Genovese died of a heart attack at 71. Officially, that was the end. Yet rumors persisted. Some said his death was faked. Others whispered about hidden fortunes buried across Italy and America, guarded by men who vanished just as he did. The truth became part of the myth, and the myth became part of the legend. Vito Genovese's story did not end with his death, because men like him never really disappeared. Their shadows stretched through history, shaping the codes of silence, loyalty, and fear that still define the underworld. He was feared, admired, hated, and yet somehow necessary to the system that created him. To his wife Anna, he was both tender and tyrannical. To his children, a father they could never truly understand. To his men, he was God and ghost, law and punishment combined. He built an empire from the ashes of poverty, yet lost it to the hunger for more. He preached loyalty, but trusted no one. He sought control, but found only isolation. The boy from Naples who crossed the ocean in search of a future became the silent ruler of New York, and, in time, its most haunting memory. In the end, the Mafia did not create Vito Genovese. It revealed him. It gave form to the darkness he had carried all his life, the relentless need to command and to conquer. And when the world finally moved on, what remained was not the empire he built, nor the money he made, but the silence he left behind. Because legends like Vito Genovese do not die. They fade slowly, quietly, until all that's left is a name, a whisper, and the echo of footsteps in a city that once belonged to him.